Have you ever felt the echo of missed chances, the silence where the sound of celebration should ring out?
That sting of lost opportunities is often due to a failure to truly connect, to resonate with potential clients, to communicate the true value you bring to the table with passion and precision.
The truth? It's not the lack of service quality that hinders, but the absence of warm, compelling and persuasive communication.
These really are game changers, the secret ingredients to turning maybes into definites.
And that's where we come in at Teachable Moments.
So if you're a lawyer, financial advisor, business consultant, accountant, trustee, director, sales leader, subject matter expert, or anyone else offering professional services, this podcast is tailored just for you.
Time after time, opportunities are missed and businesses and careers stutter because of a lack of simple, teachable communication and negotiation skills. I'm David Solomons.
And I'm Matthew Dashby-Hughes.
Welcome to Teachable Moments.
Coming up in this episode,
how to deal with conflict, the tools you may need, and exactly how to use them.
David, so today we're going to be talking about a really interesting and quite a thorny subject in a lot of ways, because it's something that a lot of people find really quite intimidating, and it's really about conflict. And I suppose, at a time of year when everybody's getting ready for Christmas as we record this, you can tell from the Christmas decorations that are behind your head. If anybody's watching this on the YouTube video rather than listening on Spotify or whatever, you'll see the tinsel. And as any divorce lawyer will tell you, the divorce rate tends to go up around about this time of year, sadly enough.
Hopefully not here.
Hopefully not here, absolutely. But over the course of the next half an hour, we'll tell you why not here, because we both know how to handle conflict, don't we?
I hope we do. I think the answer is we do until the moment when we don't. It's always like that, isn't it?
It certainly is. It certainly is. So hopefully over the course of the next half an hour or so, we're going to have a little bit of a dive into how you can turn dysfunctional disagreements into constructive challenge, how you can potentially get a mutually satisfactory outcome, the old notional idea of the win-win, if that's such a thing, or at least, something where there's a consensus of opinion on an outcome where you can walk away and part company as friends, if nothing else. So, I mean, David, from your sense, I mean, you're somebody who actually, you kind of relish these kinds of things, don't you? Because things move forward when you have these debates. So tell me more about your view on this.
Funny enough, I said to my wife this morning, Catherine, I said, look, I'm doing this podcast on conflict today. And she laughed. I said, why are you laughing? She said, David, you don't do conflict like other people. I said, I don't know what you mean. She said, well, most people, and she was obviously speaking for her, most people get defensive and close down and energy is lost. You get energized and excited by it. I said, does that make me less sensitive? She said, no. She said, the thing is, sometimes conflict doesn't even register with you because you just see it as a sort of opportunity to engage. And I think there's some truth about that. I don't seek conflict, but I've learned a number of tools to deal with conflict. And some I've learned through work, some I've spent 25 years working personal development training, leadership training. I've learned some tools around that in particular, which works both with other people, with institutions. And I've been very lucky to spend time with people who are peacemakers and have taught me tools as well. If there was one thing that I could say that works, if you can do it, in any environment, if you are in a conflict or if you are facilitating people in the conflict, if you can get one person out of the two or three to acknowledge just a little bit of the part they play in that conflict, if they can own any of their own stuff, if the question that is asked is, what part of your behavior can you own that might have caused this? If you can get that chink open, for them to say, I realize sometimes I could be a bit unreasonable. Maybe I was a bit unreasonable. The moment you get that, it opens the door because it gives permission to the other person or people to go, well, actually, yes, now you've said that, there's a part of me that does this. And it's very hard to get that door open. I'm not a trained mediator, but I've mediated conflicts between clients where you work for 3 hours to get that part of them to open the door and you keep saying, what part of this can you own? It's all him. Is there a part of you in here that you can own? If you had done something different, could this have been different? And when you just get that open, and if you keep at it, I have found in my experience, certainly my experience, that there is a key there to a door that will open. And I've seen guys who haven't spoken for years walk down the corridor with their arms around each other afterwards. I'm not saying it lasted, but I'm saying they saw, if you could see someone else, the vulnerability, it gives you permission. I think for me, that's a huge learning for me.
I love that phrase. Vulnerability gives you permission. And it's the key that unlocks the door. And ultimately, if you're looking at the dynamics in any of these relationships, the one thing that is the common element in any unsatisfactory relationships that you have in your life is yourself. And we have to start by looking in the mirror and owning our 100% of our 50% of that interaction, if you see what I mean. We've got to own the entirety of our half in this thing, because the only thing that's within our control, notionally in our control, is how we respond, how we react, how we show up. So I think that's really, really good advice. And building on that, we talked in a previous episode about vulnerability and its importance and its strength. Because it actually shows you as a genuine human being, and you're reaching out to the other side almost with an olive branch, saying, look, we're both human beings in here. We're both fallible. We both have a part to play here. Let's start there. And I think that's really, really powerful. Have you got an example of that for me that you could share without being indiscreet?
This is something, I don't know if I've told this story before. I have a client who I've had for many, many years, very successful. We've been right since day one. I might have told this. If I have, please stop me and we'll cut it. And I'm very proud of that relationship. We've been part of their building. Some years ago, I was at a Christmas do they were putting on, and I was with the guy and his partner, and we're chatting. It was all very amicable, as it is at these things. And he'd had a couple of drinks. I'd had a couple of drinks, but he'd really had a couple of drinks. And I said, do you know, I'm really proud of with you since the start, and we feel we played a part in this. And he looked at me and he said, you were such an arsehole. I said, what? I said, he said, you, my father knew you and he recommended you. And when I spoke to you, God, I'm putting this out on a podcast. He said, I'm not doing any kind of deal with you because I knew your father. I'm a very busy man. I haven't got to really time. Okay, I'll help. He said, you were such an arsehole. That was his words. All the time, you were an arsehole. We knew you were good, but you were not. He said, and I didn't know what, I just listened. And we finished, I said, I'm really sorry. I had no idea. All these years, I had this lovely, glowing story. And I said, something must have been good because you're still with us. He said, of course. But when you tell yourself that lovely story. So what actually happened was, I said to him, I'm really sorry. He said, it's gone. It's many years ago. What happened was, this is a vulnerability thing. It's along the same, and there was clearly a conflict in his mind about what had happened. We became much closer, because that conversation had taken place. And that works in conflict. That absolutely works in conflict resolution. Brilliant. That vulnerability is, there are lots of other things as well. We'll come on to that. But the vulnerability is, and it's very hard. So sometimes it needs a facilitator. If you're in face to face, it needs someone else to go, okay, what is it, to help this process to go along. Also, there is another trick that I've used, that I've learned over the years, is when you are talking between, you're kind of mediating. I don't mean official mediation. A great way to set is to have a wish for the future. So you may say to the two people, each of you, what's your best possible case of how this will finish? What would you like to have happen here in the best possible circumstance? So they go to that place in their mind where, and normally, if they're really in it, it might be, well, I just want some more money, or I've got to get out. Or if you're lucky, it'll be, I'd just like to resolve this. Yeah. I want to have a relationship with this person. I don't want to fight, because most people don't want to fight. If you get that to start off with, you're then working backwards. It's easier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So starting with the end in mind and actually establishing some common ground seems to be the key recurring theme here in both the examples you've just given. And building on that first one, there's an element of we're all the heroes in the movie of our own lives, aren't we? We direct our own movie. We're the star. We write it. But we've got to remember
and we win. Yeah,
absolutely. But everybody else has a walk-on part in our movie, and we have a walk-on part in theirs. But the key thing is that we're seeing it through our lens. We're seeing it through, and they're seeing it through theirs. So we're telling ourselves this lovely story about what a great relationship we've got, and they're busy thinking, "What an arsehole. Oh my God, I have to put up with him."
Absolutely. And sometimes you have to be clever about. I remember many years ago, I was running a textile company, fashion company, and we had a big dispute with a major customer, and it was a large public company, and we got hauled into their, and it was a big order for us. We got hauled into their boardroom, and we agreed another meeting, and I was angry, really angry with them, and furious. And my partner, she was crying. She was so angry. And even I was much younger, so I didn't really have all the tools. But I thought, I know I can't handle this by myself. I need some help here, but I can't ask for it from them. So I got hold of one of my oldest friends, man I consider my mentor, about 10 years older than me, very skilled. I said, look, I'd like you to come in, and I want you to pretend to be someone. He said, who? I said, I want you to pretend to be the wise chairman, and I'm the angry young CEO, and you're trying to hold me back. That way you could be the good guy. And I remember we played this out. It was a wonderful role play. I basically went in there. My partner, we said, look, best not to come in, because she was so upset. And I was like, we're going to sue you. And he was saying, no, David, you need to take some steps back here. And then he would say to them, look, it's really difficult because David runs this. I'm just the chairman. So you really need to listen to him. And they were asking him what they should do. So it was and it worked out really well. Yeah. It worked out very well, and we shook hands. And the deal wasn't the deal we wanted, but it would have gotten an awful lot worse. Yes. So sometimes I ask, what do circumstances need? And sometimes use some, just be creative about it.
It really does come down to that. It's understanding where the other side's coming from, but sometimes also recognizing the power dynamics within any relationship. And, and you can sort of drop your guard by being vulnerable and thereby change the power dynamics, which is a critical thing. But if you, look at like relationship counselors, because of course, they're the ones. I started off with a semi-flippant comment about the fact that, unfortunately more marriages break down in the hot house environment of like family times like Christmas than at any other time of year. And I was being semi-flippant, and really I shouldn't be, because that's actually a true statistic, and it's sad. But if you talk to relationship counselors, they'll say that typically you look at the power dynamics in a relationship, and they fall into three different interrelated buckets. There's power and control, so who holds the power, whose priorities hold more weight. There's care and closeness, which is that relatedness piece. It's that connection. It's that, you know what, I'm nervous here. Yeah, I'm nervous as well, actually. And then there's respect and recognition. Those three interrelated buckets are kind of where these things overlap and they interplay. And if you can understand those dynamics and the interaction through that lens, it can really help you with actually kind of working your way through these conversations.
One thing I try and do now when something upsets me is I separate the action from the person. So if something happens to me, and this is really internal, but I would also use it with other people, and I ask the question, if this action was done to you by someone you liked, how would you feel? So I even do it with politics. I say, okay, I'm not a Trump fan, let's be frank, but I used to love Obama. No, I used to love Obama.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, although he had his errors. When I read about what Trump does sometimes, if Obama did that, how would I feel? And it brings a whole nuance to things. And conversely, if someone I like does something, and someone else says to me, I didn't like that, I imagine the action being done by someone I didn't like, and see how different I feel. I find it's a very simple tool. I find that helps so much. And also dealing with other people, saying, okay, if that was done by someone you loved or cared about or was a friend, how would you feel about it? And you could see the confusion on their faces. But if they just stop for a moment and you ask, was it really that bad? Or is it about the person? If it's about the person, then it's your stuff, not their stuff.
Oh, that's such a good takeaway. That really is. That is your stuff, not their stuff. And then what we're talking about here is a thing that they call the fundamental attribution error, which is a cognitive bias, which is about how we attribute our sense of their intent, their intention behind an action, and as a protection, we've evolved to protect ourselves. So there is safety in assuming negativity of intent, because it means that we can put our defenses up if we need them. But unfortunately, the negative unintended consequence of that is that we tend to infer negative intent even when there's actually benevolence of intent. And it tends to be a default, and a lot of conflict comes from that. So I think that's a really good, profound observation.
I knew it would be. if you told, I knew you'd work out how it could be profound.
There you go. We just summarised the podcast in one hit, didn't we?
Absolutely. David being profound even though he didn't know it. Okay. Explains Matthew. Yes. I think there are, one of the tools that I've learned, I don't think it's trademarked or over the many, many years, is really breaking down something if I'm in conflict. So it might look like this. I would like this to end with our relationship being closer. Okay, so that's where I start from. The facts are, you turned up 30 minutes late for this. The facts are you've done that 10 times in a row. Those are the pure facts. No judgments, the facts. Mm-hmm. Okay? The judgment I make based on those facts, and this is really interesting about time, is that you don't care about me. Mm-hmm. That's the unknown. I hear that a lot. But you really say, why do people care if people are like, look, it's because that means I'm not important to you. The judgment is you're a person to whom I'm not important. How do I feel? What's the emotion? Sad, angry, and a deep level, and I'm going very psycho. People can feel abandoned when that gets down. Abandoned. What do I want from you? Knowing I might not get it. Turn up on time. Yeah. Plan your day. Make sure you don't. You've done this 10 times in a row. Don't do it. Okay. And the most important bit is, what part of this behaviour can I own? And I've seen this done. A person go, God, well, actually, I always turn up late for things, and I didn't really sit. And the reason why that comes out is, and because you're much more of a psychologist, most people project onto other people. The issues that most people have with other people are really around. It's an internal thing.
I suppose to some extent you lean into the whole element of trying to protect their psychological safety and your own, it has to be said, because there's two participants here. And a great acronym that I learned years ago, which is it's not mine, I have to say, I wish I'd come up with it, but it's SCARF. So SCARF. So if you think status, which is their dignity, protecting their dignity at all points, showing them a little bit of respect and recognition. C is certainty. If you can talk to them about what it is you both want to achieve. So giving a little bit of certainty about what this conversation even looks like. So it lowers their anxiety, helps them to show up just as you're trying to show up. A is agency or autonomy. So this is the control side of things.
Okay.
And a great baseline for control, and we all learnt this when we were about 18 months old, how to control things. And it's the word no. If you can't say no to something, you don't have control by definition. So give them explicit permission up front to say, well, actually, we might not get a resolution. And that's okay as well. The important thing is that we have the discussion. And that permission to both say no gives you both walk away presence. And that gives you a sense of control, a locus of control, as the psychologists would call it. The R is relatedness, and it's that connection. It's that connection between the two people. It's that ability to actually say, are we in this together? Do we have any elements where we share values or we share an intent, we share a goal, anything there? And then the final thing is F, which is fairness. And different people mean different things by fairness. And under different circumstances, different interpretations of fairness are correct. So it's about, is there a sense of justice here? Is there equality? Is there equity? And those two things are different. Equity is you get out something proportionate to what you put in. Equality is you get out an equal share, or is the is the outcome going to be distributed based on need, which is a different thing again? So being aware of those different elements, the SCARF, is a really useful tool to go into any conversation with.
It was also how you set up things to avoid conflict. If you know, so we're talking here about clients, customers, and bills, and nobody argues over more than anything than money. You know, and so how can you set it up in a way that there's less conflict around that? So I used to have a simple thing. I do it less now because I don't. It doesn't seem to be such a problem. But I used to have a thing where I would say right at the start of a transaction. Many professionals avoid talking about money with their clients because they're embarrassed or it's difficult. Or I don't have that problem. For me, that's the number one thing. We know where we stand. So my conversation with a client would go. We'd talk through that. I'd say, okay, so here, would you like to talk about money now? They always say yes. I'd say, here's how it goes. When you say jump, my answer is how high. When I say, here's my invoice, you say, here's the check in 28 days. And these days, we wouldn't use a check. And I'd say, do we have an agreement on that? Yes. So I can call you on that at any time, and you can call me on this. Yes. And it works so well because we'd have, obviously, clients I'd say, do you remember that chat we had? What was that chat? About the agreement that we've reached. You jumped. I jumped then. You said, yeah, did I do that? Yeah, okay. And and sometimes it goes wrong. And I remember I had a client where I really lost it. The client, he always paid late. Sometimes it took a long time. Only one. And the other thing was we had a transaction where I felt we were being treated contemptuously. Mm-hmm. And because that was me adding emotion to what wasn't an emotional thing. He pulled out of part of the transaction, hadn't even told us. We were trying to get this done. I had a whole team working. And I remember we had a meeting in my office and I was furious. But I controlled myself with difficulty. And he said, what's going on, David? I said, I'm going to be really frank with you. There's two things I need from you. He said, what's that? I said, money and respect. And I'm getting neither.
Ooh,
he said, what do you mean? I said, well, we had a deal. Remember the conversation? You not getting. And respect does not look like this. Respect does not look like your solicitor, we work hand in hand doing this and not, we're working for you. We're hand in hand. You're not respecting us. You want respect, but you're not giving respect. And he was shocked. He was shocked so much so that our relationship improved so much. It went from a client I didn't have a close relationship with, and I normally do have close relationships with clients, to actually having a very close relationship with him, telling me about his son who had personal problems, sharing stuff. And even now, he's busy, one of his businesses went under and he's involved, but he still phones me now and again just to say how's things.
Yeah.
And it was just really, and that comes back to saying the no. There comes a line. It's like I'm sure we're going to do a full podcast on negotiation because I love that.
Yeah, me too.
And part of it, I ran a workshop for some trainees some while ago in which we were talking about how to negotiate. And one of the things is know where your no is, and then try and find wins for the other guy, not for you. Try and find wins for him so that keep you further away from the no. But when you get to the no, it's no. I've given you those wins. That's a line. You don't go over that line.
Yeah.
You go over that line, and I will rain hell on you. I mean, you don't actually say that, but it really is. That's the line. Everyone needs to have that line. We can talk as much about vulnerability, and we do, and it's really important. But everyone has that line inside them that will, if they were to agree, so it's actually not even a money thing. If I were to go beyond that line, I couldn't stand what it said to me about myself.
Mm-hmm. To some extent, conflict resolution is always an element of negotiation in there. But you just pointed out something which is absolutely critical, that the best way to actually resolve a conflict is to avoid it in the first place. And the best way to do that is to set up the clear boundaries and parameters and guidelines around which your relationship will run. So if you give them absolute certainty up front about what the non-negotiables are, not even just in the sort of sense of, sort of any deep policy or anything, but just as you said, okay, I only need two things from you. I need to be paid and I need respect. And that's a very clear
that's really all,
agreement. That's all it is, right?
Yeah, that it brings me to just another a really good client, had for many, many years, one of my oldest clients. And several years ago, I can laugh now, they were thinking of selling their company, or the majority of it. And the CEO rang me, he said, David, he said, we're thinking of selling this part. I went, oh, it's fine, okay, well, we'll start prep. He said, I'm afraid we're instructing someone else. I said, what? He said, well, we met someone through this who did something else on another deal with some, and we've decided he's out. And I was I said, okay, fine. And I was very upset. Everyone on my team was very upset because they'd all worked. So I remember I was a bit like, Alan, do you ever see Robin Hood with Alan Rickman in it?
Yes.
Where he got so angry, he said, Christmas is off. Well, I did that. We had a Christmas party. I said, we're not doing Christmas with you. We're not doing. I was really angry. And then he said to me, well, it'll need a bit of a lead up to this. We'll need you guys to carry on doing some work for us. Would you be okay? And I said, I'm a professional. I'm always going to be professional. I've served you so far. It's not going to stop. And I'm glad I did that. And I carried on very professionally. I couldn't really let the anger go for a while. But I carried on. And obviously we started to warm to each other. What actually happened was that the sale fell through. So we carried on. 5 years later, they decided to sell it again. They didn't even think about anybody else. They just came straight to me. We actually did it. And to this day, we're still acting on everything else. Yeah. And so I think, I don't know what, I'm not sure, I'm sure you'll take something. It's more about sometimes swallow your pride and shut up.
I think I would phrase it as get out of your own way. Ultimately,
yes.
Being a rational being and being an emotional being, you can't divide the two out. When you meet somebody, you also meet their problems, no matter how much they try to hide it. So you can't avoid that. We have to bring our whole selves to every interaction. But to some extent, just allowing yourself that breathing space to recognize your emotional state and then do it anyway because you know it's the right thing to do. Yeah, that's. I mean, to be fair, that's something that does come with a level of maturity. I have to say, in my younger days, I have definitely got plenty of war stories where I have self-sabotaged and I've cut my nose off to spite my own face and then looked at it afterwards and thought, Matthew, you're an idiot. Why did you do that? Yeah, I'm sure we've all got stories like that. But
me too. Me too. I lost a big client once because I couldn't bear him. And I couldn't bear the way he was acting. And to be honest, when I look back now, they were silly things, but sometimes you can look back with some pride and know, well, I did the right thing. Yeah. But I think, wherever you're in conflict, whether you're in conflict with clients, I'm talking about whether you're in conflict with co-employees and whether you're in conflict with a boss. It's harder with a boss because the power dynamic is very different. Mm-hmm. These conflict resolution tools about owning your own stuff and about being vulnerable. I am aware, and I've heard this, I mean, certainly in a lot of what I call very corporates, showing vulnerability is a no-no. You kind of have to do it without that. I've been in boardrooms before where people just you can't do that. If you do it, you'll get knifed.
I mean, there is also an argument to say that if that's the environment you're in, and it's something that those are not waters you wish to swim in, then get out of the water. Go get into a different pool.
I absolutely agree with that. But for some people, they can't do that. So sure. The take there is less about concentrating on the vulnerability and more working on the collaboration. Yeah. So we're in this. We've got this problem here. Don't have to make it emotional. We've got this problem here. It would suit us and the company if we can reach a conclusion on this because we need to move forward. What could we do together to make this work? What are your main concerns here? And then you go down. What are your main concerns? What do you need to have happen here? If that doesn't happen to you, what will happen? Yeah. Once you drill down with each people, you often find the story beneath the story beneath the story. They're actually quite close to each other.
That does feel like an extremely good place to draw to a bit of a conclusion. Lots in there to unpack. We've talked about the importance of agreeing in advance what the relationship is going to look like and what our guidelines are, what our non-negotiables are, how we should treat one another, so we avoid conflict in the first place, or at least we give it. And then if conflict does happen, we've got parameters to resolve it. We've talked about establishing commonality of values, of goals, some level of
vulnerability.
We've talked about the importance of vulnerability. Yeah.
Separating actions from the people.
Correct.
Look at it in a different light. Yeah.
Indeed,
Perspective,
absolutely.
really, that is. Yeah.
Perspective and ascribing intent to people. And we've talked about protecting psychological safety. So I think we managed to cover quite a lot in half an hour there. So hopefully something that everybody's got something out of. And I think that is probably a brilliant place to end not only this episode, but also our first season. This is the end of season 1 of Teachable Moments.
Rush past, gosh.
Absolutely. There you go. So episode 6 already. Incredible. So thank you. Hear from you too. So hit the like button, leave us an honest review, and please share with friends, colleagues, and anyone you think would benefit.
Yes, and make sure you take action and benefit from these teachable moments.
Don't forget to be here next time. We'll have more tips and tools that you won't want to miss.
So subscribe now and stay informed.
And we'll see you next time on Teachable Moments.